Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Frank Gehry. So you should know that short there is, the film is about an hour and a half long, and it's actually showing in the exhibition on a continuous loop. It's well worth watching. I watched it. Sidney Pollack, he defined talent in that film as liquefied trouble. So I'm wondering, are you more liquid or more trouble?
That was, as he said, that was his first documentary. And he didn't know a lot about architecture. He was an old friend, and unfortunately that turned out to be his last film. He was great, and he knew how to ask questions, and he pushed me around. I think the best parts of the film are him on camera talking to me. So they had a third camera or second camera filming the two of us. When the film was finished, it had showings in various parts of the world, and Sidney, who flew his own plane, for reasons I don't know, decided to go to every showing. And he asked me to go, and I just wouldn't go with him. I thought it was a waste of time. On the last one, it was to London, and we had 3 stops, and he said, "You got to go with me on this one." And the first night we were on stage after the film, we started riffing on each other's questions and started to fabricate a different story. And then the second night, we changed it totally, and we didn't tell each other that we were going to do it. It was kind of interesting. The third night, he got sick and went home, but we missed. What can I do?
So, one of my favorite stories out of the film, there's another architect, Charles Jenks, who says, the way you finished your house in Santa Monica, the final touch, you were shaving in the bathroom and there wasn't enough light. And then you found a hammer. Tell us what happened then.
Well, I mean, that's a little bit of a variation on what happened, but I did need some light in the bathroom, and I took a hammer and knocked a hole in the wall and stuck a piece of glass on the outside with adhesive, and it never leaked. It really.
And your wife was okay with that?
It really worked. It's not there anymore, though. We did something else.
But that house in Santa Monica was a house that really kind of put you on the map. But now you're building another house. What happens to the original, I think it was 22nd and Washington, whatever. What happens to that house?
Well, a very wealthy friend of mine was here a few weeks ago, or months ago, and we were talking about, we love the house we're in. The new house was designed by my son, and we had him design it because he wouldn't go to architecture school. And he wanted to be an architect. So we created the project, and I was talking to this friend about it and said, "What should I do?" And he said, "But Franck," he was French, "but Franck, you should have 2 houses." And I looked at him and said, "What a great idea. I would never have thought of that." So.
Very French, very convenient. What is it like starting a new project? You've described it in the film with some anxiety. How does that work? The sort of the blank paper moment?
Well, it's not unlike any creative effort, and I think when I say that, I include probably everybody that has to, business people have to create effort, have a creative effort, painters create, scientists, and it's all about trusting your intuition, being inquisitive, curious. I was raised, grandfather used to read Talmud to me, and it's all about why. And you see these guys sitting around a table and they're arguing about why this and why that, and the most minutest details they argue about. But that culture of that, I think, was embedded in my life early, and so I'm curious, and I try, if I find myself doing something that I've done before, I discard it. Recently, I saw a little film where Wayne Shorter, the jazz saxophone guy, was going to a studio to meet his musicians, and they were all set up and had their their stands set up, and Wayne came in, and the guitarist said, "Hey, Wayne, what are we rehearsing tonight?" And Wayne said, "You can't rehearse what you ain't invented yet." And I think that's pretty much the story. I think I find that to be true with neuroscientists and people in business too, that have to invent new ways, have to respond to the times. Things are changing. There's financial markets, stress, blah, 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 politics, crazy politics now. But it's, and how do you learn, how do you react to it? How do you survive it? How do you deal with, how do you create your lives? How do you create your world in response to these things changing, endlessly changing? You have to be willing to question, look, try things, and accept that you have something going for you. I mean, trust your intuition, and over time, you build a confidence about it. Even though I think I always feel with any new project, I always feel a little bit of trepidation that it seems like it's going to be insurmountable, or I can't do this. I don't know if I can do this. There's all these insecurities, which I think are healthy, but you go through that. I mean, I don't believe the press and all that stuff about what I'm doing, so they're all over the place, so you can't pay attention to that.
There's something, though, about architecture, the time span of from the moment that you take on a commission to the moment when that building is opened. Yeah. The expanse of time is pretty unique. A painter spends a day or a week at a painting. You're talking years. Yeah. How does that work in terms of staying true to vision and changing? It seems that's quite a long distance run.
Well, you accrue value as you go. It's like that. You start, you make a move, you look at it. I always say I look at it for a while. I start to hate it. So I but there's something there, and so I throw most of it away and do another one, and then I hate that, and then I do it again and again, and I hate it, and then I start to like it, and then everybody around me hates it. And then I always like to say the good Lord sends a message to everybody to like it. and they do for a while. And then it goes into another zone. But it does take time. There's a lot of people. When you're building a building, there's a lot of hands on it. And the architectural profession is part of the construction industry, for better or for worse. In the medieval times and in the Renaissance, the architect was the master builder and had complete control. In today's world, the construction industry, the contractors and project management, people like that, are given parental control. The architect is marginalized. It's usually the model has always been that the architect and the client love each other. They make the building together. They love it. And then they put it out to bid, and it costs too much. And then the client starts talking to the contractor and not to the architect. And I think that model has been accepted and even in a way promoted by some of the organizations that we are part of, that in the building industry. And I've always stayed in control of my projects so that we can control the cost and deliver the buildings on the budget that we said we accept.
I want to talk about some specific projects. Before I do, can you talk a little bit about the importance of being able to use this 3D software? I guess it was originally designed for French aerospace use, but you imported that into your work, and how that, as I understand it, gave you more control over the building portion of it. In other words, you could use the software to wrench back control from the contractors.
Yeah, I'm not, as Sidney or somebody said, I think it was Tom Crenz maybe in the film said that I really didn't know how to use the computer, and I don't know how to turn it on, and I'm dangerous. I always push the wrong buttons and everything. But I realized that the French aerospace industry was building airplanes paperless, and the amount of precision they had to put in that process, because the damn thing had to fly and be safe. And so I thought, well, a building isn't as stringent, but if you could build a building paperless, you could change the approval process, the building department. You could probably, if it was all plugged in, you could probably approve it in a day or 2 days electronically instead of 6 months, the way they do it now. And now everything is done on even with the 3D software. The culture of construction always requires 2D prints. So the building department requires 2D prints, and the construction guys require. We've found that we can save 15 to 18% on a building if we go straight in and because you coordinate all the trades. The biggest problem in construction is change orders are 15%, And then the latest fad is you add on a construction manager for 3%. That's 8. If I'm insulting anybody in the audience, forgive me. You can talk to me about it later. I think that the 15% change orders are because you're using two-dimensional drawings, so with three-dimensional building. And so it's bound to have collisions of pipes with structure and so on. That's what happens. And the construction industry at Disney Hall, the contractor put a trailer on site with 20 or 30 guys that did nothing but change order. And they didn't win. We had a pretty solid story, but they won something, but not what they would have. But so they're used to this, the culture of that, and I think we should change that. And we shouldn't, because the construction industry is 30% waste. So when you talk about leads and all that good stuff, think about if you save 30% waste, that's 100 million, that's 30 million. Take the total construction industry, which is in the billions and billions, and take that 30% out. That's a lot of energy and money and savings that is wasted because of the system.
So this software,
I could go on for hours on that one.
this software really paid itself off with Bilbao. Tell us about Bilbao.
Well, Bilbao was the second time I used it, and it was the easiest one to tell is the steel contractor. So Bilbao didn't have it was just curved and different shapes, and no two pieces of steel were the same. And so one would have expected misunderstandings, but because of we trained the subcontractors, there were 6 of them that bid on a job. We spent a week training them how to use the computer program, and they came in 1% spread, so that means you never get that. That means the documents are so clear that there's no misunderstanding. And if you got 6 people with 1% apart, you're pretty safe to pick any one you want of the 6. And their bids were 18% under budget for the steel. So that was pretty exciting. And it held through the construction. They had a slight problem at the end. I think maybe they picked up a few bucks on that, but mostly it held.
Talk about the impact of that museum on this, what was, when you went in, was a pretty rundown provincial city in Spain with not much of a future.
Well, I don't know about not much of a future, but it was in a sad state. The shipping industry, which it relied on, and the steel industry were gone. They were almost dead. The the kids were graduating high school and leaving to go to college and in other places and weren't coming back. We were hired by the Basque government, so it was the president of the Basque government, the mayor of the city of Bilbao, the Minister of Commerce, the Minister of Education, the Minister of Health, the whole group. And when I met them, they knew they needed something, and they knew that the Sydney Opera House, with all of its troubles, did brand the city, did something. And they asked me if I could do something that would accomplish that. And so I looked at them and I said, yikes. I don't know about that. I can't guarantee anything. Anyway, they were very supportive, and the budget was tight. It was 80 million euros, so it was about $300 a square foot in '97. So that would be about half of what it would cost to build a museum, even then. So it was tight. It was very tight. When the design was publicized, my life was threatened in the press. And I used to, when I'd go out in public, I would stand beside the president. I figured he had bodyguards or something, but it opened in '97, and it cost 80 million euros. And since then, it has earned for the city 3.5 billion euros. Not bad, huh?
Better than investing in Facebook.
Yeah. I should have invested in it, right? And for me, it's nice to go there. They love me. I could live there for free and all that wonderful stuff. Anyway, the town is better. People aren't shooting each other like they used to, and it's alive and exciting, and nice things happened.
It's an extraordinary example of one building that can transform an entire urban landscape. There aren't many that have done that. I was just trying to think, what other cities have that? You mentioned Sydney.
Sydney.
I guess the Eiffel Tower would be a building that's an icon in Paris, but not every city has one. I can't even think of one in London. And then you think of Taj Mahal in Accra, older buildings. What does it feel like now that you've...
Well, the little pavilion I did in Chicago for the Pritzkers in the park had a big effect on the economy there. So it doesn't have to be a rundown economy. I think Disney Hall's had an economic impact. I know I'm on the board, so I know it's done well for the orchestra, and so I think buildings should be able to earn their keep.
So you mentioned Disney Hall. Let's talk about Disney Hall. That was on again, off again, on again. How did you stick with it that long? It was pretty. That was a difficult birth.
That was a rough one. Yeah. I was blamed at the first go around for all the problems, and so when I'd go out to a restaurant, if somebody would come over and say, "How could you have done that to us?" I got a lot of that. And I toyed with the idea of leaving town, moving, and I started looking around where I might go. But then they hired the Heinz people to evaluate the project. And the big Texan from the Heinz people called me and came to the office after he'd studied it for a week. And he walked in, shook my hand, he said, "Mr. Gehry, you've been," I'm not going to use the four-letter word he said, but that's what he said. And he said, "Nothing that you did is what created the problem," is what he meant. So I was exonerated finally. But I think it's hard. These problem projects like museums and concert halls and things like that have boards usually have people on the board that know everything about everything. And God bless them, they weigh in because that's what they're supposed to do. And in many cases, they make mistakes, and I see it around the world quite a bit. And I don't know how to repair that problem, but I think the professionals, the architect has to remain parental, I call it, in order for it to be, and take responsibility and be responsible to deliver a building on the budget they accept and get it done, like the old master builders used to do.
What about all the designs that never got built? I don't know what percentage of your work is, half, quarter, whatever, but there's a whole bunch of work that never gets actually built. What does one feel about that?
I don't go in there to look at it because it's sad for me. I don't like to look backwards anyway, but when I see some of those models, I sort of but I think it happens in most of us have that kind of issue.
But probably more so in architecture than other arts, because almost everything you do is competitive. And
well, when you start a project, usually the economy's up, and then stuff happens. It drags, and things happen in the world, and things slow down and stop. And we were working on the Abu Dhabi building for the Guggenheim. I don't know, it must be more than 10 years now. And they keep saying they're starting, but I've given up on it, I guess. It's taken so long.
What are you going to do with our river?
The river. The wonderful river. So this is volunteer work. You should know it's not. I'm not being paid for.
In which case they'll criticize it even more. In which case they'll criticize it even more.
What?
They'll probably criticize it even more because it's volunteer work.
Because yeah. The mayor and some of his friends asked me if I could look at it and take it on, and and I said I would if I could have the time and get the resources to get the experts in to look at it. I didn't think you could just plant trees and make it pretty, because it's a flood control project and a lot of water goes through it, and it has serious implications, financial implications to the city. Not all bad. Some of them, a lot of water's wasted that could be reclaimed, and so we brought in experts from all over the world, from Holland, from wherever people have done projects like this. and got a lot of advice, and started looking at the hydrology of it, how often it's empty and how often it's full, and how much water is lost, and what it costs for reclamation, and what are the politics of that in each community. Who cares, who wants to participate. There are 15, besides LA, there's 14 other cities. There's Southgate and Linwood and Burbank. There's a lot of towns along the river with mayors and city councils and jurisdiction, and various levels of interest in it. There's serious health problems associated with the river that need to be addressed. And there's a whole laundry list of stuff. And we met with medical people, we met with a lot of these individual communities. They're city they're planning people, they're mayors, we even got Jerry Brown to listen for 2 minutes. And he sent a lot of his key people to look at what we were doing and support the effort. And then what are the needs of each of these communities that in relation to the river? What would they like to do? What could they do? And they're each different. Some of these communities are the densest population in the United States, are in some of these communities. They're packed in there, and they need open space and access to the river, which they don't have. And so how do you create a solution that's financially feasible, that you don't have to go begging the federal government for a lot of money, that you could maybe a lot of it self-finance with the savings. And so we're looking at all of those issues and clarifying all of the possibilities, and then we're starting to study individual parts of the river where there are structural solutions and design solutions which could change the character without interfering with the flood control mandate that the river has. And I've gotten really into it. I spend a lot of my time on it now. I'm very excited about it. It touches a lot of things. We're getting into education. There are a lot of schools along the river that are having troubles, elementary schools and public schools, and so it's a very dense problem, and it's a very exciting prospect, and I'm just turned 87, so I'm probably going to spend the rest of my life messing with this thing.
apart from the river, I'm wondering, what would you most hope to be remembered for in terms of your architecture? It can be either a building or just an approach to architecture. I'm curious, what do you see as your legacy?
I don't know. I don't think about that a lot. I try to a lot of stuff sometimes misunderstood, and I try to clarify it, and it's kind of hard sometimes, so I just forget about it. We don't take everything, so I like to work with people that I feel comfortable with and that have the mutual interests in making environments that are humane and exciting and contribute to their, that about 40 or 50 years ago, something like that, I went to Delphi with a friend, and I went to the museum, and I saw the charioteer, the bronze, and it was 500 BC, and I stood in front of it, and I started crying. It was so beautiful, and I realized that, and it said artist unknown, I realized that whoever made that thing way back then was able to transmit feelings through the ages to me and probably to many other people that see it. And I thought that that's really our mission, is to transmit feelings with inert materials. I mean, that's the simplest description of what we do. And music is the same. You transmit feelings with a few notes. And it's very basic, and so if I can do that, I'd be happy. Yeah.
Can we take a couple of questions from the audience? Alexander, I think, has a microphone.
Wow, there's people out there.
There's a lot.
Yeah, see, this auditorium's terrible because I couldn't see anybody.
Testing. All right. We've got one here, over here. Mr.
Okay,
Gehry.
we got one there. Go.
To your right.
Mr. Gehry, what did happen with the Disney Hall? I think many of us in this room remember it was a parking structure for so long, and then finally they started the construction. What did cause the delay?
Oh, no, you don't want to know that. I think mismanagement somehow, misunderstandings, funny people,
Sure.
Dishonest people maybe, honest people trying to be smart ass.
Mr. Gehry, my name is Ted Green, first-time caller, long-time listener.
First time what?
I'm wondering if you feel that architecture plays a role in diplomacy. In other words, when you as an American architect are hired to design a building overseas, do you feel you have a diplomatic role?
Well, yes, you have a role not to embarrass your country. I've got two countries to worry about. I'm Canadian and American, so I'm mostly American now. Yes, I think you should be aware that you're being judged as part of a country, part of a culture, and I've seen it abused and we've all seen it abused by other people from other places. Americans don't do that, but
One over here.
Hello. You were talking about transmitting feelings. I just wanted to share something with you. One morning early, I was driving through Los Angeles, and all of a sudden I saw this building, and I came to a screeching halt, and I said to the security man, "What is this? What is this building?" He said, "It's the Disney Hall." I said, "Oh my God." He said, "You can't park here, madam, you can't park here. You're in the middle of a street." I said, no, you have to give me a moment. This is breathtaking, it's taking my breath away. And I just wanted to share that with you.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, Mr. Gehry. My name is Emma Garcia, and I'm a student at Vaughn High School. And according to Arc Daily online publication, architecture tends to be a male-dominant.
I can't hear you. Something.
Architecture tends to be a male-dominant industry. What is your opinion on the large gender imbalance in the industry today?
Question is whether architecture is a male-dominant industry and what you feel about the gender balance among architects.
Oh, boy. Well, in the last, I teach at architecture schools, and in the last, I'd say more than 10 years, probably 15 years, the schools have been graduating at least 50% women, which is, but you don't see them as running offices and I know they're out there, and I think we're working on it, right? We are, Megan and I. We have senior women in our office, and we try to have representatives of different ethnicity, and it's hard. There aren't a lot of African American architecture students. It's a small percentage I see. And so we got to do something about that. I don't know. It's a global issue. I mean, we got to fix it. And I think there are women in the industry that are equally talented, equally capable, and you can see it in other industries that women take charge and can run companies.
So, Mr. Gehry, okay. In regard to the LA River, have you looked in the past to other structures that paid homage to water, for example, like the Roman aqueducts? Have you looked in the past for inspiration for the future?
Sure, I think I search everything I can, but I think there are a lot of, the issue of water and the river and is probably more a issue that exists in many cities in slightly different ways than here, but and with a different mandates. But I think looking back to aqueducts and all of that is, I mean, we can't do that right now. But I know about a lot of it. We've looked at a lot of it.
His last question over here, please.
Throughout history, who are your favorite architects?
Oy vey.
Or your top three?
Well, I think Eric Mendelsohn was one of the unsung heroes, and I met him when I was a student at SC. He gave a talk, and he was an arrogant son of a bitch, and he gave the students that asked him questions, he gave us a lot of trouble, but if you go to Potsdam, there's the Einstein Tower that he did, and it's placed in relation to the other buildings that were there before in a very subtle way that it's a real model of how to think about urban design. I mean, at a very high level, how to juxtapose pieces, forms next to each other from different periods, and how to place them so they're positive for the buildings that are around them, and the buildings around them are positive for them. So that's I think a big deal, and I don't see a lot of people today doing that. And maybe, that's old-fashioned, and maybe the world is moving too fast, and that's a stupid thing to do. If you buy a Tesla, it's not going to take time to do that or something. But I still think it's a respectful thing to do, and I think Eric Mendelsohn was one of the few people who did it, and he's an unsung hero. He's not known very well for that, and I wish I could take the time and research it and write about it for him. Somebody should, but I think Aalto, for me, the Finnish architect, was really important. I never met him, but when I was 16 years old in Canada, I went to a lecture at the University of Toronto. I didn't know I was interested in architecture then, but I heard this nice man speaking, and he showed a bent wood chair, and he had a curved building. I was quite taken by it, and I never forgot it. And when I became an architect and I realized it was Alvar Aalto. And I went to Finland, visited his office, and when I got there, I asked him if on November 16th, 1946, Alvar Aalto gave a lecture at the University of Toronto, and they found the record, and I was right. It was him. The third one is I don't know. I mean, Corbusier. I love the Ronchamp Chapel. That makes me cry when I go there. Frank Lloyd Wright sometimes gets to me. He certainly got to me when I was studying architecture, although I never wanted to meet him. I had a chance to meet him 3 times, and I turned it down because I didn't like his politics. Now I'm sorry I didn't, but Schindler, when he was here, I got to know him and thought very highly of him. I don't know, that's 4 now.
I break my rule. Mimi, you get the last question.
Yes, I'm interested to have you tell the audience what you came up with the French fries.
She's talking about the organ at Disney Hall, which I don't remember who called them French fries. I think maybe we did, but I don't remember. Somebody did. When we were designing the organ, we had an organ builder in LA, and the organ builders community is a very strong group. It's a very tight club. And they would only agree to an organ that was like a stand-up one that looked like many you've seen. And I wanted to make it out of wood and put the pipes. Usually people want to show the silver pipes, and I wanted to do the reverse. So I wanted to hide the silver pipes and use the wood. And there was some pushback on that you don't do that. And then I wanted to make them curve, not vertical, and I got a lot of pushback on that, even though I said, well, when people hold a clarinet, they don't always hold it straight up and down. And then I wanted to curve it, and I got pushback on that, even though French horns have curved parts to them. And I got to the point, it was very frustrating. And so then I designed a case to hide the organ. And the organ builder, Manuel Rosales, who's one of the sweetest guys, started crying. And he said, "Oh, I'm not happy that you're hiding our work." And so then he agreed that he could do it all the way I wanted it. And his brethren, I suppose, relented and let him go for it. It looks like French fries, so they call it that, or I called it that, or something. But it works, and it's very, very functional. And the organ builders club, whatever it is, have come there and had their own concerts using it. And so I think whatever rules that we broke are broken permanently. That was nice.
Thank you again to Frank Gehry for coming and talking to us. Thank you so much.